Hey, it's Taylor Hack here with Hack and Company at Remax River City, and we are looking for trusted expert insight. So obviously, we have to call Darren Sharko, mortgage specialist with RBC Royal Bank. Thank you, Darren, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on this, Taylor. My pleasure. Nice to see you again.
It's always good, and it's interesting just because we're in this time and age where this is like the interaction that's normal, right? But to
Yeah,
give people kind of a sense of things, like you and I, it'd be pretty normal for us to talk quite a few times a week, right?
absolutely. We're always corresponding back and forth, either over the phone or through text or through stuff like this, Zoom or WebEx, you name it.
I love that kind of thing. And the reason that I like it so much is because it allows everybody to kind of stay top. Like, I think that a lot of people don't really understand how often it is that people that are top performers end up collaborating and talking about all kinds of things. It's almost like just your friends in business, really. And when we talk about top performers, we got to kind of touch base on, Darren Sharko as an RBC mortgage specialist, because not everybody knows this, but I used to hold the same position. But I'm going to say that if you wrote mortgage specialist beside my name, you'd be writing it in lowercase. And beside your name, it's definitely uppercase. Because to put it in context, you now have been a mortgage specialist. Like, it's how many years altogether?
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while. I'm going to age myself a little bit, but I started in 2003. So I've been at this for a while. And you know what? I have had quite a successful track record in my career. I've been top 10 performance in Canada 5 different times. I won a President's Cup Club recognition in Alberta 8 separate times. So when it comes to top performance and track record and experience, I think it'll be challenging finding anybody within RBC that holds a candle to that. I got to say.
And I believe it. And I remember that when I had originally met with you, you would have been like in your third year when I was kind of coming in there, and you had already been on the rise by then. Because I think that a lot of people don't really understand the culture of banks that are advice based. The people in the branches, they want to work with people that really make their client experience awesome. And as a real estate team that has the highest ratings and reviews on Rank My Agent in our marketplace, we actually can't have people that we rely on all the time that would ever really drop the ball. And that's actually one of the reasons we like to work with you so much, because what a lot of people don't see in the accolades is how many kitchen tables you've rocked.
You better believe it. One thing I find in this business, Taylor, just like your business, it's all about client experience. And I always kind of keep track of where my clients are coming from. And over 25% of the business I'm writing today is from repeat clients that I've assisted in the past. That were happy with my service, and they've either passed along my name to a friend or family member or colleague or whoever. And of course, you know what, I build my business a lot of ways with working with amazing experts such as yourself, where you know I have done quite a few deals together, and you know what, I pride myself on making sure those deals go smooth and earning your trust to to do some reciprocal business in the future. So when it comes to client experience, I aim to please, and I do a pretty good job of it, and I know you do as well. So that's why I love working with you, buddy.
I really appreciate that, and that's how we feel too. Because what we know is that we can kind of set it and forget it. So I'm going to take our friends here through the client experience, and what it looks like often is that one of us will end up talking to somebody that needs the other one's help. And
Yeah.
so when we have a client that maybe is coming back to us as a repeat client, because that's something that's very common, a lot of the time they're going to tell us that they have a preference. They're like, you know what, this is my bank. And we're going to say, listen, we know somebody who is going to give you the best experience as part of that familiar trust that you've built with that financial institution. And that's where you come up. So then we make a quick contact. And after that, I know that the clients get in touch with you, and you're so good at understanding what they're trying to do right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Um, that's something that I don't think enough people do, is that they listen in order to help. Can you help us understand a little bit of that initial call when you're talking to somebody who's just starting out? Let's say that they wanted to move this spring, right? What do you what's the one thing I know that you are always like have a handle on that the average person doesn't know when they're talking about mortgages?
That's a great question, Taylor. If someone calls me, what I'll often do, usually one of the first steps is finding out sort of where they are financially. Uh, Most of the time, we'll start by doing a pre-approval or sort of figure out, where they're at. I got to say, a big part of my job and sort of what separates me from a lot of other lenders is I'll be able to anticipate where there could be concerns with the client. It could be things like they need to maybe reestablish some credit. Maybe they've got to increase their down payment. Maybe even might be something serious, like they need to start looking for a cosigner or something like that. But at the end of the day, after the initial call, what I do is I'll assess exactly where they're at. I'll tell them exactly what they qualify, so there's no mystery when you or anybody else is sorry about that. It was just flipped off there. There's
That's
no
okay.
there's no mystery when they're calling in and what they qualify for. And but most importantly, I'll really be able to sort of set it up so at the end of the day they'll know exactly where they're at and exactly what they need to do to get to where they want to get to, basically. So it gives everybody, you, the client, myself, confidence in the whole process, basically.
I want to dig in there for a second because I love how you said anticipate their needs. And that's like the difference between dealing with a pro and dealing with like a clerk. Like a clerk
Totally.
says, "How can I help you?"
Yeah.
And normally someone who's a real pro, they're like, "Tell me a little bit about your situation." And in there, they're going to know how to help them. Like, you know how to help people. But I think the big misconception is that pre-approval is an
Yeah.
exam, right? Like somebody shows up and you're like the teacher that they remember from high school, and
Yeah.
you look down at what they like, how they feel about who they are financially, and you pull out that big like red marker that they're not allowed to use anymore, right? It
Yeah.
like that's how it feels. Can you tell us what a pre-approval actually should feel like? So when somebody talks to you, what is a pre-approval?
You know what? That's such a great thing. I know some people are actually almost intimidated to get a pre-approval, but the reality of it is, all it is free information assessing where they're at and what they can get, and also what they need to do to get what they want to accomplish. So it's usually like a 20-minute call. I could do it over the phone. We could do it over a WebEx, or we can even meet in person. In pre-COVID times. But at the end of the day, it's not a painless experience. It's what I would do is simply find a little bit about their income, their assets, their liabilities, and really sort of figure out where they're at financially and what they qualify for. And maybe they qualify for a $400,000 home, for example, and they want to get to 500,000. Then we'll talk about strategies on what they got to do to get that. So I'm always sort of looking for angles or tips or extra advice that I can assist to at the end of the day, help accomplish the goal of the client, which is getting into the home they want to get into.
Okay, so it's a 20-minute exam, and how much should I study?
They don't need to even prepare. I mean, the one thing is a lot of times if they just call me up, client calls me up, they'll know the information right offhand. Especially if they're a salaried employee and we need to know their income. They know what they get paid. I'll ask them to grab a pay stub, and we can figure it out right away. Where it might get a little tricky is if they're self-employed, then we usually use a tax return or two tax returns to figure out what their income is. Not everybody knows that off the top of the head. So what we'll do if they call me up is we'll start things, and the information they don't know, I'll just make a little list of what I need to get, and they can just email it to me, call me, whatever, get it to me afterwards, and then we can complete it afterwards. So in terms of studying, they don't need to do anything. All they need to do is come and grab a cup of coffee, have a 20-minute conversation with me. I'll tell them exactly where they're at.
That's really interesting because, looking at this from the real estate angle, it kind of feels like a pre-approval is like a market evaluation. Like somebody's
Mm-hmm.
just going to come by, they're just going to take a look and then
Yeah,
say, "Hey, this is what it looks like."
yeah,
And the thing that I like about having somebody with your experience is that after the initial phone call, even if they just kind of have the gist, you're going to be able to help them understand what they want, which is like, "Hey, what is my buying power?"
mm-hmm.
And then if there are any obstacles, I like the way that you bring those up with anticipation. Like,
You
"Hey,
bet.
listen, it seems like you're self-employed. We're going to need a little bit of paperwork here, but it's no big deal. If you get me this concise list, then we can get sorted." But really, after a 20-minute phone call, you're already starting to tell people like, "Hey, this is kind of where it's going to land."
Totally. And I'll tell you something that's funny is a lot of times just through a quick, no commitment phone call. I just had a client this morning who's a great example, and he wants to put an offer on a property, and he's struggling with the 5% down payment. So he called me up, and we were looking at it, and he has a property already where he's got a lot of equity in it. So what we're doing is we're talking about options about taking out a line of credit on his existing property and using that for his down payment. So the client went from, sort of planning to how can I save for my down payment to wait a minute, I've already got my down payment. I can, we can make something happen a lot sooner than later. So sometimes it's uncovering options that the clients don't even know exist, basically. So it's a no obligation, no hassle, real comfortable process in terms of figure out where a client's at and what we can do, and just looking for solutions on what we can do to help them get to their goal. Basically, we're working together. Really, is what we're doing.
Totally. And the cool thing is because you're at a full service institution, you can look at the whole field, right? Like you
You
can
bet.
say, hey, here's the way to get a mortgage, but it involves these other structures in your kind of
Yeah,
financial self.
yeah.
That's always interesting.
Yeah, you know what? There's times where maybe clients has a good amount of current debt right now, and their debt ratios are high in order for them to buy. So often maybe one of the first steps we'll do is we'll sit them down with one of my partners, that when maybe we'll look at doing a consolidation loan. Get their monthly payments all into get all their debt into sort of one loan, get the monthly obligations down, and then after that loan, we'll see where they qualify, basically, or let them know where they qualify even before doing it. So it's I definitely have the full services of everything that RBC has to offer in terms of investment advice, loans, line of credits, all that kind of stuff. I got it right at my disposal.
That's really cool because, a lot of people don't understand that they only really look under the hood of their financial car at certain times. And
Yeah,
almost always that's tied to a project. So,
yeah,
like the first time you look under the hood is maybe when you're getting that first credit card, and then you're going to check again when you need a car,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so a lot of people seem to be a little embarrassed when they're approaching you, and they're thinking like, "Oh man, I've got this other debt. Now I have money set aside for a down payment, but I need to get this looking perfect before anybody sees it." I think that's a misnomer.
It really is. It really is. Like at the end of the day, I think a lot of people I find are even surprised what they qualify for. They come in thinking they might not be able to get what they want, and then it ends up a lot of times we're able to get it more than what they initially wanted. And my job, what I do is, a lot of times, like a client will come to me and say, well, I'm looking to buy $350,000 home, but what I'll always do is I'll always when I do a pre-approval, I'll find out what the maximum they can qualify for. So maybe they qualify for 400 or 450 or 500. I'm not encouraging them to go out and buy a $500,000 home if they're looking for 350, but I want them to know that if they're out shopping and they find the dream at 365, but their budget was 350, that they can still pull the trigger on it, basically. So I'll always kind of figure out what their maximum qualification limits are, and then once I go shopping and find a property, then we just do the mortgage on based on what they actually buy.
Oh, I like that. So you're going to zero in on what they're saying that they're budgeting for, but
Yeah,
then kind of let them know like, hey, listen, this is where you're going to be for this.
yeah,
But sometimes people don't really understand what it will cost to get what they want.
yeah.
And my guess is that because this is something that happens all the time.
It is like something that's interesting is like you know like a $10,000 increase in a purchase price translates to about an extra $50 a month. And so really, like, so if they see a property that they kind of like, and say their budget was 350, but they see one that they really love at 360, I mean, then they can kind of budget in their mind, is it worth the extra $50 a month? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but at least they kind of know where it's at, and make some decisions accordingly.
Man, that's something that I find so interesting when you take a look at how payments break down, especially when somebody's like, man, should I buy a condo or should I buy a duplex?
Yeah,
And we're often talking to them about doing this payment math and saying like, hey, you know what, with $10,000, Darren's saying they're about $50 a month right now. So if that's the case, like if you didn't have a condo fee, which averages around $300 to $350, let's count it
yeah,
up. So for
yeah,
the first 100, you're going to get 20,000.
Yeah.
which means 300 is 60,000, and
Yeah.
then another 50 is $70,000 more purchase price.
Yeah.
See, I think that there's so many people that should know information like that
I
because
know.
it's going to help them action ideas, because you're putting more tools at their disposal. And by
Totally.
helping them understand the context, that means that we can help them make better investments in the market.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what our reputation is built on, is getting those places, those people to the places that they love to be. But in the meantime, why wouldn't you just have people that you could trust help you, have better game, like do better business of being a family?
Yeah, it's there's lots of I always think it's all about giving information and advice so clients can make a proper decision. One thing I always like to do in my pre-approval or just sort of phone conversations is explore what the monthly obligation or monthly payment would look like, just so they can have an idea of, man, if I really buy this property, this is what I'm going to be committed to. So I find that's a good kind of just run through the numbers, make sure they understand what they're getting into. And I will say something like, one thing that at RBC, what we do is we'll do a soft credit check if they want us to commit a rate. Right now, the rates are at a historical level. They've been as low as they've been in 100 years, Taylor. So, and there was
Did you just
originally
say 100 years?
over that. As long as we've been tracking rates, it's as low as the rates has been is right now. It's the prime time in terms of interest rate since we've been tracking rates in over 100 years.
Man, so all these families that are like really feeling the pressure to upgrade right now,
Hmm.
to think that they could be out also like moving into a position where they're getting one of the like lowest cost money to move into our market. Because
Ever.
on the
Yeah.
side, like on our side right now, we're hearing great things in real estate. We're hearing a lot of demand, and it's actually, it's busy as all get out. Like
Yeah.
spring is so early.
It is. I'll say something that's kind of interesting is, so like you're right. Like if you're going to try to time the market on the interest rates and you drew a graph over 100 years, we're at the very bottom. Like the bottom is bottom gets basically. I know that's really fueling the market. Initially, I will say there's been a lot of forecasts where the rates were going to stay low and potentially into kind of the third quarter, possibly of 2022. I know there's always sort of the economists would sort of can change those, but there does seem to be a little bit more upward pressure in terms of interest rates. I just read a report out of the Financial Post that said interest rates could start increasing as soon as April or May of this year. So, I mean, I will say this much: if you're thinking about getting into the market at some point, in this year, it's always a good idea to get a pre-approval and lock in the interest rate. That way, if you start going up, you take advantage of the low interest rate. And I do know that the low level of where the rates are at right now is fueling the market. There's no doubt. People are taking a look and they're locking into 5-year terms because they love seeing interest rates below 2%, which is really almost unheard of. So it's a great time in the interest rate market. I'll say that for sure.
I totally agree, and I think that that's an interesting perspective to kind of put it on a centurion scale there,
Yeah.
to let people know, because a lot of people are thinking, how do I do this well? What's the bottom of the bottom? And when the Bank of Canada does again move these rates, they normally do it in a pattern, right?
Yeah.
Like you were the one who told me about this. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, you bet. You know what? As the economy starts increasing, or the economic economy starts getting a little better, they will start increasing. Typically, they start increasing at quarter percentage points at a time, basically. So, I mean, and honestly, how fast they start increasing depends on how well the economy starts recovering. To be honest with you, so there's a lot of other factors in terms of inflation and quite honestly, some things that are right out of our control, that things that can happen overseas, but at the end of the day, when the rates start to increase, you'll likely see them come in quarter percent increments. Sometimes it's 15 basis points, but often it's 25 basis points. And so it's really hard to say for sure when exactly that will happen. We know this much. We know the rates are at a historic low rate now. We know they're going to increase. We just don't know when. So really, when it comes to interest rates, this is sort of the low of the low. There's no doubt. I'm not sure that they're going to go down any further, or they have much room to go down any further. But they're certainly going to be going up at some point. We're just not sure when. So it is a really good time to more or less lock in an interest rate now, because of the rates, like you said, are, if you took over 100 years, you drew out a graph, we're at the lowest point they've been basically right now. So it's a great time for interest rate market, that's for sure.
So you mentioned locking one in. Like we often see the most action in real estate is happening in April, right?
Yeah,
Like June 30th is the highest possession date of the year. And then that's meaning that with the most, like with the majority of possession dates kind of working out in that 60-day range, that really April is like the playoff season for real estate. Now,
yeah,
taking a look at that, we're expecting that to be moved a little bit. We saw the playoffs move last year due to COVID. And
yeah.
this year we're really seeing them come forward. We're already talking low inventory. So if I was somebody who was looking to kind of maybe action this, you were saying lock in a rate. What does that do for me?
You know what? All it does is it protects you, and there's no cost to it. So if you're calling in, getting a pre-approval, what we'll do is we'll commit where the rates are at today, right now. Now, say you go out and start. Today is February. What are we? February 4th. So say you go out and you end up buying a property in, like you said, maybe April. Well, if the rate from February 4th to where they're at in April, if it starts increasing, you don't have to worry about it. You can shop. You don't have to worry. You don't have to think, geez, what happens if the rates go up? If you've done the pre-approval, we've committed the rates. You've got 120 days where basically the rates could go off the charts high. You've already got something locked in. It doesn't matter. However, if the flip side happens, say if the rates decrease during that time, well then we get rid of the rate hold, where it was. We give you the lower rate when you buy. But if the rates increase, you're protected. And the beautiful thing of it, there's no cost, there's no obligation. 20-minute phone call or virtual meeting or whatever works best, and we can lock in those rates, and more importantly, give you great advice in terms of what your options are in terms of buying. And more so, Taylor, what we'll do is we'll put in we'll actually give a formal letter, and you can use that for negotiating. I know if you're talking with your clients, and if you're in multiple offer situation, you could probably use that to your advantage, I would imagine. So we will provide that for our clients, that's for sure.
So some people don't know what the effect is when you are trying to like achieve excellence. And one of the things that many people don't see is that when a hacking company teammate comes into a multiple offer, most listing agents are super confident with us. They know that we know how to deliver. Everybody on our team knows how to deliver. There's all the names in the reviews. And the other thing is that they'll see a package like you're describing. So often they'll be sitting in front of an offer that is presented to them very well. When I used to do this in person, I would actually change the weight of the paper.
Yeah.
The deal would feel better. And I think that people that don't negotiate don't understand. They just don't get what it's like to be at the table over and over and over again. And like you've got to be pretty close to financing $1 billion in mortgages.
Yeah.
And
I
I
mean,
think I'm
18
around
years
half a
old.
billion in like deals negotiated in my career.
Yeah.
And so getting those reps in when we say, hey, listen, by the way, don't you worry about this finance condition. We don't have a pre-qualification. We have a pre-approval. It's not from somebody who knows somebody else. It's directly from a representative of the largest financial institution in the country. And this says that these guys are good. We're just going to check your house. We're just going
Yeah.
to do like an appraisal and make sure that part's cool, but you can bet on this. That's what you're talking about. And that's how we do it. And in fact, a lot of people don't know we also have scheduled the home inspection. So we're coming there and saying, by the way, we're going to have our home inspector come by noon on Saturday. Really convenient for you guys, because I think that you should bet on people that are in action. I think
Yeah.
multiple offers is going to be a big deal this year. I was looking at comps today in Sherwood Park, and we saw 105% of list price
Wow.
up on the MLS, and at average price there, that's over $20,000 over. So that's the other thing about this is we were talking about how easy pre-approvals are. And if you're betting on this, like if this is the house you want and you're going to be in competition, I really think that you want a financial institution that can do it all and has an entire division that is there to make sure that you finish first.
Absolutely. You couldn't say it more accurately. Like at the end of the day, you know what? I will say a couple things. One is, and I find when it comes to mortgages and just financial advice, there's two things, and even just dealing with people in the real estate industry, experience and track record. Those are super important. And I know that's one of the reasons Taylor, I love working with you. And I know when it comes to the financial sector, like you said, I've been in this since 2003, and I've been a top performer for many years. But you're right, I've got the full army of RBC behind me. I mean, things like bridge financing, line of credit, investment advice, you name it, visas, consolidation loans. I've got a team of people that are dedicated to just helping out, that right at my immediate disposal, which I feel really fortunate. And it does give me and often a lot of my clients kind of an advantage in terms of obtaining what they want when it comes to their mortgage financing.
Man, that's awesome. And I really appreciate you chatting with us today. And I wanted to touch on one more thing before we went. And that's like we were talking about the speed and the movements and making sure that everything's guaranteed, but also like the biggest helper. Like the reason that you've been such a top performer is because you've been exchanging value with these families. And how convenient is it when they can say, I'm going to use my down payment from RSPs, but it's with your financial institution.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is that you only get RBC when you go to RBC.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of people don't know that RBC is the largest lender of mortgages in Canada. And independent mortgage brokers don't actually have access to the RBC suite of mortgages. So what I'm saying is if you want to get an RBC mortgage, or you already deal with RBC, you definitely need to contact someone like myself, a RBC mortgage specialist, and I've got the full range of RBC products. And you know what? Sometimes, especially if you already deal with RBC, you log online, and it's convenient to have your mortgage under the same roof as your other, financial products. And the other thing I know is that if you already deal with RBC, say you've got a line of credit or Visa or some investments. When you get your mortgage, we have something called a multi-product rebate, so we can get reductions or reduced fees on some of your existing banking products. So those are sort of just little, I call them bonuses you get. But you're right. At the end of the day, if you're interested in exploring, what RBC has to offer, you go to an independent outside mortgage broker, they don't have access to RBC at the end of the day. So you're sort of missing the largest lender of mortgage services in Canada. So, you know what? I'd love to the opportunity to assist you, or of course, any of your clients, Taylor. You've got amazing clients, and you're such a pleasure to deal with. And I definitely love to be able to offer some financial services, and I'm always happy to help. And I make it easy too. I'll say this much: like, I mean, I don't just work sort of your typical banker's hours. I'm happy to help on the evening. I'm happy to help on the weekends. I know you and I exchange texts sometimes at all hours of the day, basically. And that's the other thing. I'm happy to even these days. I'm finding more and more people. Some people are almost scared to pick up the phone, and that's fine. You know what? If it's something quick, I encourage them to shoot me a text. I'll send them right back information. So I try to make it as easy as possible to deal with people and help them out at the end of the day.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate you summarizing that way. It's definitely why you're one of our trusted experts. And this was great insight. I think that it's going to be easy for people to contact you. I think that they're going to be super impressed to see that you can give them a link where they can get an idea of their affordability right out of the gate, like inside of 30 seconds. And we're going
Yeah.
to make all of that contact information available for those of you who are looking and maybe first-time home buyers. February 10th is a big date. And that's because Darren and myself will be hosting a virtual event targeted towards you, first time homebuyers, on behalf of Oliver RBC and the bank that makes sure that you have the advice you can bank on.
Yeah,
So thank
absolutely.
you so much, and have a great day. We really appreciate you. Cheers.
Thank you, Taylor. Cheers.